The massive space station hung in the darkness like a metal mountain. Jake Sullivan pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the crucible grow larger. The testing facility was bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Strange alien ships floated around it like insects around a bright light. "First time seeing something like this?" asked Dr. Lisa Martinez from the seat beside him. She was looking at her tablet, reading files about the different alien races they would meet. Jake nodded. "Hard to believe we're really here. 6 months ago, I was just another pilot flying cargo runs between Mars and Earth." The transport ship shook as it moved into the docking bay. Through the window, Jake could see creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some were tall and made of what looked like living rock. Others had 6 arms and moved like giant spiders. Few looked almost human, but had blue skin and eyes that glowed in the dark. "Remember what they told us in the briefings?" Lisa said quietly. "Most of these species think humans are weak. They don't understand why we were invited to the trials." Jake stood up as the ship finished docking. He was not a big man by human standards, just average height with brown hair and calm blue eyes. But he had spent years in the military and knew how to carry himself with confidence. "Let them think what they want. We'll show them what humans can do." The airlock opened with a hiss. Jake stepped out first, followed by Lisa and the other 2 humans on their team. The docking bay was huge, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. The air smelled strange, like metal and something Jake could not name. A creature that looked like it was made of gray stone walked toward them. It stood over 8 feet tall, with arms as thick as tree trunks. When it moved, Jake could hear the sound of rock grinding against rock. "You are the humans," the creature said. Its voice sounded like gravel falling down a mountain. "I am Kexthal, of the Vorlon people. I run these trials." Jake stepped forward and tried to look confident. "Commander Jake Sullivan, representing Earth. We're ready for the tests." Kexthal looked down at Jake like he was studying an interesting bug. "Are you certain? These trials are designed to find the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Many beings much larger than you have failed and died." "We understand the risks," Jake said. Other aliens had gathered around to watch the humans. Jake could hear them talking in languages he did not understand, but their tone made it clear they were not impressed. Some were laughing. A creature that looked like a giant mantis clicked its jaws together. "Look how small they are. How can such tiny beings think they belong here?" "Their bones must be hollow like bird bones," said another alien that had too many eyes. "One good hit and they will break apart." Lisa stepped closer to Jake. She was trying to stay calm, but he could see her hands were shaking a little. "They're not exactly rolling out the welcome mat," she whispered. Kexthal raised one massive hand, and the other aliens became quiet. "The trials begin in 1 hour. You will be tested on strength, endurance, and ability to function under extreme conditions. The first test is simple. You must survive in a 20-gravity environment for 1 full hour while performing basic tasks." Jake felt his stomach drop. 20 times Earth's gravity would make him way over 3,000 pounds. He had trained in high-gravity chambers. "But never anything close to 20 G20 gravity?" Lisa asked. "That seems excessive for a first test." Kexthal made a sound that might have been laughter. "For most species here, 20 gravity is barely noticeable. The Vorlons evolved on a world with 30 gravity. The Zephyrites can function normally at 40 gravity. 20 gravity is what we consider light exercise." Jake looked around at the other aliens. They were all much bigger and stronger than humans. Some had thick shells or extra limbs. Others looked like they were made of metal or stone. Humans suddenly seemed very small and soft in comparison. "Perhaps you should observe the first few tests," Kexthal suggested. "Learn what real strength looks like before you embarrass yourselves." "We didn't come here to watch," Jake said firmly. "We came here to compete." The alien administrator shrugged, which looked strange on his rocky shoulders. "Your choice. But do not expect special treatment because you are new to galactic society. The trials show no mercy to the weak." As they walked deeper into the facility, Jake could hear the other aliens talking about humans. None of it was good. They called humans fragile, primitive, and stupid for even trying. Some seemed to think it would be entertaining to watch humans fail spectacularly. The testing chamber was a metal room with walls covered in strange symbols. In the center was a platform surrounded by control panels. Kexthal explained that when the gravity increased, they would need to move around the room, operate equipment, and solve simple puzzles. The first species will demonstrate, Kexthal announced. A creature that looked like a bear made of blue crystal walked onto the platform. When the gravity activated, the air itself seemed to become thick and heavy. Jake could feel the pressure even from outside the chamber. The crystal bear moved around easily, completing all the tasks in less than half the time allowed. 3 more species took their turns. All of them passed without any trouble. Some barely seemed to notice the crushing gravity at all. Now the humans, Kexthal called out. Jake walked toward the chamber. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his face calm. Behind him, he could hear Lisa whispering a prayer as he stepped onto the platform. Jake looked back at the crowd of aliens watching him. Some looked curious. Most looked like they were waiting for him to fail so they could laugh. A few seemed almost sad, as if they were watching someone walk toward certain death. The gravity activated, and Jake's world became pain. The gravity hit Jake like a giant fist. His legs buckled, and he crashed to his knees on the metal platform. Every breath felt like trying to suck air through wet concrete. His heart pounded so hard, he thought it might explode in his chest. Around him, the alien observers murmured with what sounded like disappointment. They had expected him to collapse completely. Few made clicking sounds that Jake realized were their version of laughter. He forced himself to stand up. His legs shook like twigs in a storm, but he stayed upright. The first task was simple. Walk to a control panel and press 3 buttons in order. Under normal gravity, it would take 10 seconds. Now each step felt like climbing a mountain. Jake moved forward 1 painful step at a time. Sweat poured down his face, and his vision blurred at the edges. But he reached the panel and pressed the buttons. A green light flashed, showing he had completed the task correctly. The second task required him to lift a metal bar and place it in a slot across the room. The bar weighed 50 pounds normally, but under 20 gravity, it felt like 1,000 pounds. Jake wrapped both hands around it and pulled with everything he had. The bar moved an inch. Outside the chamber, he could hear aliens talking. Look at him struggle with such a simple weight. Even our children could lift that easily. Why are we wasting time with these weak creatures? This is embarrassing to watch. Jake gritted his teeth and pulled harder. The bar came free from its holder. He dragged it across the floor instead of trying to carry it. Step by step, fighting for every inch, he moved the bar to its destination. His muscles screamed in pain, but the bar clicked into place. Another green light. The final task was a puzzle, arranging colored blocks in a specific pattern. Jake's hands shook so badly he could barely hold the blocks. Twice he dropped them and had to start over. But his mind stayed clear, despite the crushing pressure on his body. He solved the puzzle with 3 minutes to spare. When the gravity returned to normal, Jake collapsed on the platform. His whole body felt like it was on fire, but he had passed the first test. Kexthal's voice echoed through the chamber. Human has completed the 20 gravity trial. This is unexpected. Jake struggled to his feet and walked out of the chamber. His legs still shook, but he forced himself to stand straight. The aliens watched him with different expressions now. Still not impressed, but no longer completely dismissive. Lisa ran to help him. Jake, are you all right? Your heart rate spiked dangerously high during the test? I'm fine, Jake said. Those voice came out as a whisper. What's next? Kexthal consulted a tablet covered in alien symbols. The trials continue in 6 hours. The second test involves combat simulation under 25 gravity. Participants must fight armed opponents while enduring the increased gravitational force. Jake felt his stomach sink. Fighting while barely able to move would be nearly impossible, but he nodded. We'll be ready. During the break, the human team gathered in their assigned quarters. Lieutenant Ben Carter, their engineer, looked worried. Jake, that first test nearly killed you. The combat simulation will be much worse. I know, Jake said. He was lying on a medical bed while Lisa checked his vital signs, but we can't back down now. They're watching to see if we quit. Corporal Amy Johnson, their medic, spoke up. The aliens don't understand human physiology. What looks like failure to them might just be us pushing our limits in ways they never have to. Lisa looked up from her scanner. Amy's right. I've been studying the other species. Most of them evolved on high-gravity worlds with stable environments. They never had to develop the same pain tolerance or adaptability that humans have. That's all very interesting, Ben said, but it won't stop them from crushing us in the combat test. When the 6 hours were up, Jake felt better, but far from recovered. His muscles still ached, and his joints felt like rusty hinges. The combat chamber was larger than the first test room, with obstacles and barriers scattered around.
Holographic.
Enemies would appear that the participants had to defeat using energy weapons. The first alien to take the test was a Zephyrite, one of the insect-like creatures. Under 25 gravity, it moved like a deadly dancer, spinning and leaping while shooting holographic targets with perfect accuracy. The test lasted 15 minutes, and the creature never seemed to slow down. 2 more aliens completed the test easily. Their movements were smooth and controlled, even under the crushing gravity. They made it look effortless. Your turn, human? Kextel announced. Jake picked up the energy weapon. It felt heavier than a sledgehammer in his hands. He stepped into the chamber and immediately felt the increased gravity slam him down. 25G was worse than anything he had ever experienced. His bones creaked under the pressure. The first holographic enemy appeared, a target shaped like an armored soldier. Jake raised his weapon, but his arms moved like they were underwater. The target fired first, hitting Jake with a simulated energy blast that registered as a minor wound on the scoring system. Jake forced himself to aim and fired back. His shot went wide. The target moved to a new position and fired again. This time the blast knocked Jake to his knees. The scoring system registered a serious injury. From outside the chamber, Jake could hear aliens laughing. The human cannot even stand properly. This is pathetic. Perhaps we should end this before he hurts himself permanently. Jake used his weapon as a crutch to pull himself upright. Another target appeared, then another. Soon 3 holographic enemies were firing at him from different positions. Jake stumbled between cover points, trying to return fire while his body fought against the crushing gravity. His shots were wild and inaccurate. The enemy fire kept hitting him, registering more wounds on the scoring system. Was failing the test badly. But something inside him refused to give up. He changed his strategy. Instead of trying to move quickly, he found a defensive position behind a barrier and focused on accuracy. His hands still shook, but he learned to compensate. One by one, he began hitting the targets. The test grew harder. More enemies appeared, moving faster and shooting more accurately. Jake scored wounds accumulated, but he kept fighting. His movements became more efficient as he adapted to the brutal environment. When the test ended, Jake had barely passed. His score was the lowest of any participant, but it was still a passing grade. He had survived 15 minutes of combat under 25 gravity. Ben Carter took the test next. Jake watched from the observation area as his friend entered the chamber. But Ben was not as lucky. Within 5 minutes, the gravity and stress caused him to collapse completely. The medics had to rush in and carry him out. Amy worked frantically to stabilize Ben while he lay unconscious on a medical table. His heart stopped for 12 seconds, she said. A few more minutes in there, and he would have died. The alien observers watched the humans struggle to save their teammate. For the first time, some of them looked uncomfortable. They began to understand that what seemed like simple tests to them were potentially lethal to humans. Kextel approached Jake. Your companion is seriously injured. Perhaps you should withdraw from the remaining trials. Jake looked at Ben's unconscious form, then back at the alien administrator. We're not quitting. Ben knew the risks when he volunteered. There are 3 more tests, Kexel said. Each one is harder than the last. The final test has killed members of our strongest species. What's the final test? Jake asked. 50 gravity for 3 hours while completing complex tactical scenarios? No human has ever survived 50 gravity for more than a few minutes. felt fear crawl up his spine like a cold snake. 50 gravity would be like having 24 additional versions of himself standing on his back. But he looked at the aliens watching him and knew he could not back down. "When do we start the next test?" he asked. 2 days passed before the final test. Jake spent most of that time in the medical bay with Ben, who was slowly recovering from his injuries. The doctors had managed to repair the damage to his heart, but Ben would not be participating in any more trials. "You don't have to do this," Ben said from his hospital bed. His voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. "Nobody expects humans to survive 50 gravity. Even trying it is basically suicide." Jake sat in the chair beside the bed. He had been thinking about the same thing for hours. 50 gravity meant his body would weigh over 8,000 pounds. His bones might snap from his own weight. His heart might stop from the strain. "The other species are watching," Jake said. "If I quit now, they'll always see humans as weak. This might be our only chance to prove we belong in galactic society." Lisa entered the medical bay carrying her tablet. She had been studying the 50 gravity chamber for 2 days, trying to understand what Jake would face. "I've been analyzing the test data from previous participants. The mortality rate is 30%, even among the strongest alien species." "What about the ones who survived?" Jake asked. "Most suffered permanent injuries. Broken bones, damaged organs, brain damage from lack of blood flow." "Jake, the human body simply was not designed for this kind of stress." Amy Johnson looked up. "From checking Ben's vital signs, actually, that might not be completely true. I've been thinking about human evolution. We developed on a world with variable gravity, extreme weather, and constant environmental threats. Most alien species evolved in stable, comfortable conditions." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Think about it," Amy continued. "Humans can function with broken bones, severe injuries, and extreme pain. We have redundant systems throughout our bodies. Our brains can override pain signals when necessary. Most aliens have never had to develop those abilities." Lisa nodded slowly. "Amy might be right. The aliens see our small size and assume we're fragile. But human bodies are built for survival, not comfort." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the 50 gravity chamber being prepared. It was a massive spherical room with walls covered in monitoring equipment. Engineers from several species worked on calibrating the systems. "I'm going to try it," he said finally. "If I die, at least humans will be remembered as brave rather than weak." The next morning, Jake stood outside the 50 gravity chamber. Word had spread throughout the station about the human who was attempting the impossible test. Aliens from dozens of species had gathered to watch. Some looked curious, others seemed worried, and a few appeared to be making bets on how quickly Jake would die. KEXTHL approached with several other test administrators. "Commander Sullivan, we must ask one final time. Are you certain you wish to proceed? We can arrange for you to attempt a lesser test that would still demonstrate human courage." "I'm doing the full test," Jake said. 50 gravity for 3 hours. The alien administrator nodded grimly. "Very well. Inside the chamber you will face a series of tactical scenarios. You must navigate obstacles, solve problems under pressure, and demonstrate combat readiness. The scenarios become more complex as time progresses." Jake looked at the chamber entrance. It resembled the mouth of a mechanical monster, dark and waiting to swallow him whole. "What happens if I can't complete a scenario?" "Failure in any scenario means failure of the entire test. However, your survival is more important than your performance. If you lose consciousness or your vital signs become critical, we will extract you immediately." Lisa squeezed Jake's shoulder. "The medical team will be monitoring everything. If your body starts shutting down, they'll pull you out." Jake nodded and walked toward the chamber. Each step felt like walking toward his own execution. The aliens, watching him, fell silent. Even the ones who had been laughing at humans before seemed to understand the magnitude of what he was attempting. The chamber door sealed behind him with a sound like a tomb closing. Jake stood alone in the spherical room, surrounded by alien technology he did not understand. Red warning lights flashed on the walls, and a countdown began in several alien languages. 10 seconds to gravity activation, announced a mechanical voice. Jake spread his feet apart and tried to prepare himself for what was coming. But nothing could have prepared him for the reality of 50 gravity. When the field activated, Jake felt like he had been hit by a falling building. The force drove him to his knees so hard he heard his kneecaps crack against the metal floor, his ribs compressed, making each breath a desperate struggle. Blood rushed to his lower body, and his vision went dark around the edges. Outside the chamber, aliens watched their monitors in stunned silence. Jake's heart rate had spiked to nearly 200 beats per minute. His blood pressure was dangerously high. Several alien doctors predicted he would lose consciousness within minutes, but Jake did not lose consciousness. He knelt on the chamber floor, fighting for each breath, and forced his mind to stay clear. The first tactical scenario began. A holographic maze appeared around him. He had to navigate through it to reach a control panel on the far side. Under normal gravity, it would be a simple walk. Under 50 gravity, it became a nightmare of endurance. Jake began to crawl. Moving on his hands and knees distributed his weight better than trying to walk upright. Each movement forward was agony. His shoulders and elbows screamed in pain as they supported his massive effective weight. But he kept moving. It took him 20 minutes to cross a space that should have taken 2 minutes. When he finally reached the control panel, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely operate the controls. But he managed to input the correct sequence, and the first scenario ended. The second scenario was worse. Holographic enemies appeared that he had to defeat using tactical thinking rather than combat skills. Jake had to analyze their positions, predict their movements, and outmaneuver them using the chamber's obstacles for cover. Moving between cover points nearly killed him. Each time he tried to rise from a crawling position, the gravity slammed him back down. His bones felt like they were bending to their breaking point. Blood ran from his nose and ears from the pressure, but something strange began to happen. As the scenarios continued, Jake started adapting to the crushing environment. His movements became more efficient. He learned to use the gravity as a weapon, timing his falls to land on control panels or crash through holographic barriers. The aliens watching from outside began to murmur among themselves. They had never seen anything like this. Most species either handled high gravity easily or failed completely. Jake was doing something different. He was learning and adapting in real time. 2 hours into the test, Jake was still conscious and still completing scenarios. His body was failing in ways that should have killed him, but his mind remained sharp. The tactical problems became more complex, requiring him to coordinate multiple objectives. While barely able to move, Lisa watched the medical monitors with growing amazement. His vital signs are critical, but they're stable. Now, somehow his body is maintaining function despite damage that would kill most beings. Amy nodded, watching Jake crawl through another scenario. Look at how he's moving now. He's found ways to work with the gravity instead of fighting it. That's pure human adaptability. On the alien betting pools, the odds began to shift. What had started as a certain death sentence was becoming something unprecedented. Jake was not just surviving 50 gravity, he was excelling at the tactical scenarios, despite conditions that should have rendered him helpless. As the final hour of the test began, Jake faced the most complex scenario yet. Multiple objectives had to be completed simultaneously while holographic enemies attacked from all directions. It was a test that challenged even the strongest alien species under normal gravity. Jake looked around the chamber at the tactical situation. His body was broken and bleeding, operating on systems that should have failed hours ago. But his mind was clearer than it had ever been. He began to move with purpose, turning his limitations into advantages and using the brutal environment. As part of his strategy, the aliens watching held their breath as Jake approached the impossible final challenge. The final scenario loaded around Jake like a digital battlefield. Holographic enemies appeared from 6 different directions, each requiring a different tactical response. Control panels flashed at various points around the chamber, demanding his attention. Warning alarms blared as simulated systems failed one by one. Jake lay flat on his stomach, his face pressed against the cold metal floor. Every breath felt like drowning in thick liquid. His ribs had cracked hours ago, and he could taste blood in his mouth. But his eyes remained focused and alert as he studied the tactical situation. Outside the chamber, the alien observers had gone completely silent. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood pressed against the viewing window, her hands shaking as she watched the medical readouts. Jake's heart should have stopped working an hour ago. His blood pressure readings were beyond what human physiology could supposedly handle. "This is impossible," whispered a Vorlon engineer. "No organic being should be able to function under these conditions." Kexthal studied his instruments with growing confusion. Humans' performance scores are higher than any previous participant. "How is this happening?" Lisa turned to address the crowd of aliens. "You need to understand something about human evolution. We didn't develop in a safe, stable environment like most of your species. Earth is a dangerous world with extreme weather, variable gravity, and constant threats." A Zephyrite scientist clicked its mandibles skeptically. "But humans appear so fragile. Your bones are thin, your skin is soft, your muscles are small." "That's exactly the point," Amy Johnson said, joining the conversation. "We look fragile because we evolved to be efficient, not bulky. Human bodies have backup systems for everything. We can function with massive internal damage that would kill other species instantly." Inside the chamber, Jake began his assault. On the final scenario, he could not stand, so he rolled. The 50 gravity that had been crushing him became a weapon as he used his massive, effective weight to crash through holographic barriers. When enemies appeared above him, he would time his movements to let gravity slam him to the perfect position to neutralize them. His tactics were unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Most species approached problems with brute force or superior technology. Jake was using pure adaptation and creative thinking. He turned every disadvantage into an advantage. A holographic enemy fired at him from an elevated position. Instead of trying to return fire, Jake deliberately fell toward a control panel, using his crushing weight to activate multiple switches at once. The action completed 2 objectives simultaneously while avoiding the enemy's attack. "Remarkable," breathed a blue-skinned Altarian observer. "He's not fighting the gravity. He's incorporating it into his strategy." Lisa nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "That's what humans do. We adapt. When we can't overcome a problem with strength, we find another way. When we can't avoid pain, we learn to work through it." The medical scanners showed that Jake's body was operating in ways that defied alien medical knowledge. His heart was beating at nearly 300 beats per minute, but somehow maintaining steady rhythm. His blood pressure should have caused immediate stroke, but his brain continued to function perfectly. "His pain tolerance is beyond measurement," reported an alien medic. "The nerve signals from his body should have caused unconsciousness hours ago." Amy smiled grimly. "Humans have been dealing with pain for millions of years. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Pain is just information to us, not a reason to quit." Inside the chamber, Jake was systematically working. Through the final tactical objectives, he had developed a rhythm of movement that worked with the crushing gravity instead of against it. Roll, slide, use momentum to reach the next position. His movements looked clumsy to alien eyes, but they were devastatingly effective. The holographic enemies adapted to his tactics, becoming more aggressive and unpredictable. But Jake adapted faster. He began anticipating their responses and setting traps using the chamber's obstacles and his own seemingly helpless position. One enemy thought it had cornered him behind a barrier. Jake waited until it approached, then used the gravity to launch himself forward like a living missile. The impact registered as a perfect tactical strike on the scoring system. "His combat effectiveness is actually increasing," Kexel announced. In disbelief, after nearly 3 hours under 50 gravity, the human is performing better than when he started. The crowd of alien observers began to understand they were witnessing something unprecedented. This was not just survival, it was mastery. Jake was not merely enduring the test. He was excelling at it in ways that seemed impossible. Lisa watched the final minutes count down on the timer. Earth's gravity changes constantly due to our moon's influence. Humans experience different gravitational forces throughout each day. We also evolved in environments where we had to function despite injury, illness, and extreme stress. An elderly Altarian scholar stepped forward. Are you saying that what appears to be weakness is actually a different kind of strength? Exactly, Lisa replied. Your species evolved to be strong in stable conditions. Humans evolved to be adaptable in chaotic conditions. You're seeing that difference right now. With 5 minutes left in the test, Jake completed the final tactical objective. The holographic battlefield faded away, leaving him alone on the chamber floor. He had not just survived the impossible test, he had achieved perfect scores on every scenario. But the victory came at a cost. As soon as the tactical pressure ended, Jake's body began to shut down. The adrenaline and determination that had kept him functioning finally ran out. His vision darkened, and his breathing became shallow. The gravity field deactivated instantly. Medical teams rushed into the chamber as Jake lay motionless on the floor. For a moment, everyone thought he was dead. Then Jake opened his eyes and looked up at the alien medics surrounding him. "Did I pass?" he whispered. The chamber erupted in sounds of amazement from the alien observers. Clicking, roaring, and electronic tones filled the air as dozens of species expressed their shock and admiration in their native languages. Cuckoo's voice boomed over the noise. "Not only did you pass, Commander Sullivan, you achieved the highest tactical scores in the history of these trials. No participant has ever performed so well under such extreme conditions." As the medical team carefully moved Jake to a stretcher, the alien observers began to see humans in a completely different light. The small, soft-looking beings they had dismissed as weak were actually something far more dangerous: survivors, who could excel under conditions that would destroy most other species. Lisa and Amy accompanied Jake to the medical bay, but not before hearing the conversations among the aliens. The tone had changed completely. Words like remarkable, formidable, and dangerous replaced the earlier descriptions of humans as fragile and weak. "We may have underestimated this species," admitted a Vorlon general to his companions. "If their average member can perform like this, what might their military specialists be capable of? More importantly," added a Zephyrite diplomat, "we should consider them as allies rather than subjects for protection. A species this adaptable could be very valuable in the coming conflicts." As Jake was carried away for medical treatment, he caught glimpses of the alien faces watching him. The contempt and dismissal were gone, replaced by respect and something that looked like wariness. In 3 hours, humanity's reputation in galactic society had changed forever. The test results would be transmitted to governments and military organizations throughout the galaxy. The message would be clear: humans were not the weak, primitive species they appeared to be. They were something much more dangerous, survivors who could adapt to anything and excel under the worst possible conditions. Jake smiled weakly as the medical bay doors closed behind him. The real test was over, and humanity had passed with flying colors. Jake woke up 3 days later in a medical bed that looked nothing like human technology. Strange alien devices monitored his vital signs with lights and sounds he did not recognize. His body ached in places he did not know could hurt, but he was alive. Lisa sat in a chair beside his bed, reading from her tablet. When she saw him open his eyes, she smiled with relief. "Welcome back to the land of the living. You've been unconscious for 72 hours. Did the test results hold up?" Jake asked. His voice came out as a rough whisper. "More than held up. The entire galaxy is talking about what you did. 3 dozen alien governments have requested copies of the test recordings. Military academies are studying your tactics." Jake tried to sit up, but immediately regretted it. His ribs felt like broken glass grinding together. "What about the other humans on the station? Are they safe? Safe and treated like royalty?" Lisa laughed. "The aliens who were laughing at us 3 days ago are now asking for autographs. Amy, has been invited to lecture at 4 different medical universities about human physiology. The medical bay door opened, and Kextel entered. The massive Vorlon administrator looked different somehow. He moved more carefully around Jake's bed, and his voice held a tone of respect that had not been there before. "Commander Sullivan, I owe you and your species an apology. The Vorlon people have misjudged humanity badly. We saw small size and assumed weakness. We were wrong." Jake studied the alien's rocky face. "What changed your mind?" "We analyzed your test performance frame by frame. What you accomplished should be impossible according to our understanding of biology. You adapted to an environment that kills most beings, and you did it while performing tactics that our best strategists could not have conceived." "I just did what I had to do," Jake said. Kexel made that grinding sound that was Vorlon laughter. "Exactly. That phrase tells us everything we need to know about humans. You do what you have to do, regardless of the cost or the odds." Over the next few days, Jake received visitors from dozens of alien species. Each one came to offer formal apologies and proposals for cooperation. The Zephyrite military wanted to hire human tactical advisors. The Altarian Science Council requested permission to study human adaptive capabilities. Even the proudest warrior races spoke of humans with new respect. Ben Carter had recovered enough to visit Jake's bedside. "You've caused quite a stir out there. The betting pools that started on when you would die have turned into bidding wars over which government gets to recruit you first." "What are they offering?" Jake asked. "Everything. Technology, trade agreements, military alliances." The Titan. "Guard wants to make you a senior commander immediately. No testing period, no probationary rank. They're offering you command of your own mixed species unit." Jake considered this carefully. A week ago, humans had been seen as barely worthy of observation. Now they were being offered positions of leadership in the galaxy's most elite organizations. Dr. Lisa Martinez entered the room carrying documents. "Jake, you need to see this. It's a formal invitation from the Galactic Military Council. They want humanity to join not just as members, but as equal partners in galactic defense." She handed him the tablet with the translated documents. Jake read through the terms, his eyes widening with each paragraph. The aliens were offering humans technology that would advance Earth's civilization by centuries. In exchange, they wanted human personnel to serve in advisory and leadership roles throughout the galaxy. They're scared, Jake realized. They finally understand what humans are capable of, and it frightens them. "It's not frightened," Lisa corrected, impressed. "There's a difference. They've realized that diversity of strength is more valuable than uniformity. Your performance showed them that there are different ways to be powerful." Amy Johnson joined the group, looking excited. "Jake, you have to hear what the xenobiologists are saying. They've been studying the test recordings, and they think human adaptability might be the key to surviving some kind of coming crisis." "What kind of crisis?" Ben asked. "They won't give details, but apparently there's something happening in deep space that has all the major species worried. Something that requires the kind of adaptability and survival skills that humans specialize in." Jake thought about this news. The tests had not just been about military recruitment. They had been about finding species that could handle unknown threats. Humans had proven they could not only survive the unknown, but thrive in it. A week later, Jake was well enough to attend the formal ceremony. The main assembly hall of the Crucible was filled with representatives from over 50 alien species. They had come to witness something that had never happened before: the elevation of a previously unknown species to full galactic partnership. Jake wore his dress uniform and walked to the podium without assistance, though his body still ached with every step. The alien audience watched him with expressions of respect and curiosity. These were the same beings who had laughed at human weakness just days before. Kextel spoke first, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. The trials were designed to test strength, endurance, and tactical ability. "Commander Sullivan, and the human species have proven that true strength comes in many forms. Humanity is hereby invited to join the Galactic Defense Alliance as full partners." The formal documents were signed using both human and alien protocols. Jake found himself holding the rank of strategic commander in the Titan Guard with authority over mixed species units from across the galaxy. It was a position that no human had ever imagined achieving, but more than the rank or the technology being offered to Earth. Jake understood that the real victory was in how humanity would be viewed from now on. No longer would humans be seen as weak or primitive. They would be recognized as survivors, adapters, and warriors in their own unique way. After the ceremony, Jake stood on an observation deck looking out at the stars. Earth was visible as a small blue dot in the distance. Soon human ships would travel between those stars carrying the respect and partnership of dozens of alien civilizations. Lisa joined him at the window. Any regrets about putting yourself through that nightmare in the gravity chamber? Jake smiled, thinking about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. None at all. Sometimes you have to show the galaxy what humans are really made of. And what are we made of, she asked. Stubbornness, adaptability, and the refusal to quit when things get impossible, Jake replied. Turns out that's exactly what the galaxy needs. A transport ship was preparing to depart for Earth, carrying news of humanity's new status among the stars. Jake would follow soon, but first he had work to do. The Titan Guard was already preparing training programs that would bring human tactical thinking to alien military units. Other humans were being recruited for positions throughout galactic society. The small, supposedly weak species from a backwater planet had proven that strength came in many forms. In a universe full of physically powerful beings, humans had found their niche as the species that could adapt to anything and excel under the worst possible conditions. As Jake watched the transport ship disappear into hyperspace, he knew that humanity's greatest adventures were just beginning. Galaxy had finally learned not to underestimate humans, and the universe would never be the same.